Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Jonathan Titus Hart. I appreciate you guys taking the time to actually click on my video and see what is he talking about. What's going on with this kid? Um, First and foremost, as it reads, from test to testimony, I felt in my spirit it would be best to, just tell people about myself, tell people my story. Tell people my transition, why I've decided to fully embrace what I feel like is my calling and being able to help people with life coaching. I've become throughout the time, the past year, certified life coach, specializing in dealing with people, anything from like family, business. More particularly, what I'm looking at is dealing with people that's just dealing with struggles that I'm similar with, that I had similarities with, drug abuse, people that's trying to kickstart their careers, and 180-day life, have a, not necessarily, I know with, they say with coaching, you want to, we're not therapists, we're in a position to where we're trying to push people in a forward position where we're taking them to that level of getting their goals accomplished. And that is my job. That is what I'm trying to do with understanding the fact, with dealing with people that I have a heart for when it comes to, like I said, struggling with addictions. Sometimes you have to overcome those traumas fully to get those goals active. And, meeting that balance and finding that thin line, between, therapist and coach. A lot of people would tell you, it's a line that a lot of people don't want to cross. But I understand the name of the game. I understand that, I compare it to basketball. If we're looking at life as a sport, I use a lot of sports analogies and stuff like that because I'm really into that. But, and I'm a youth basketball coach on the side as well. And so, as I look at coaching my youngins, where it's like 7th to 8th graders, of course, I want to teach them the fundamentals of the game. But in that aspect, as any coach would know, you're teaching them about life as well. You're teaching them about teamwork. You're teaching them about things that they may be coming into practice, having a bad day. Their girlfriend may have just broke up with them. Their parents may have situations at the house that, that's weighing heavy on them. And I think it's a coach's job to, being able to read the body language of their players as well, and be able to, try to be there for them in that regard as well. So for me in coaching, we're there for a goal for that person. Each individual is different. But in that as well, you want to know who this person is, what are we dealing with, to where we can accomplish the goals. And so I feel like that's a true median of what a coach is supposed to be, and balancing who this person is, what they were, what are they trying to become. And that is a joy that I feel like is going to be very beautiful, meeting different people from different walks of life and trying to connect them and help them accomplish stuff that they want to in life, whether it's relationships, like I said, or, getting back in the job circuit from being an addict, it's everybody has so many different goals, and I'm just trying to do my best in being a yielded servant. Like I said, I started off, I'm born and raised here. I say here. Well, I'm born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina. You guys are not here. But I'm born and raised Charlotte, North Carolina, dealing with, like I said, the title of this, From Test to Testimony. I called it that because in the beginning stages of my life, I struggled with a lot of addiction. I struggled with a lot of depression. Being the youngest boy in my family, I got 2 brothers. Technically, I got 2 brothers and 3 sisters. I would say I stayed with, because of, having a household where my parents split up at an early age. I stayed prominently with my mother and one of my brothers and two of my sisters in the beginning, but then she graduated and moved, and then it was prominently like my mother with a sister and a brother. Through that time, it's a 10-year gap between me and the next oldest person. So a lot of my adolescence, even though they were there, they were teenagers. They were teenagers. They were doing their own thing. As we all know what teenagers do as you get older, you want to, find yourself and hang out with your friends and, just find out who you are. And in that, I kind of felt like, even though I was a part of this family, as a lot of people may relate to, kind of like a black sheep, because it was such an age gap. I was left by myself when it came to like socialized type stuff a lot. We didn't really get cooler. A lot of my siblings, and I don't regret anything, to say the least of how things turned out, because I'm communicating. I'm close with all of them. The siblings that I'm talking about that I stayed with. But because of the age gap, we didn't really understand each other. I didn't really understand them. Because, I was younger. And so when they would tell me they be going out and, chilling with the friends, I was still trying to find myself. I was the youngest. And so I had a lot of solo dolo moments where I felt like an only child because of being such a huge age gap. And so in that, I really dealt with, finding myself, who am I? What do I want? What are the type of friends that I want around? And I was very much so of a child that was very much so just wanting to fit in, trying to find people that was my tribe, that I could relate to. And a lot of the people that I could relate to early on in life were people that was in, a street lifestyle, whether it was dealing with drugs or, dealing with gang activity, distributing drugs. And so it was kind of that was the lifestyle and the people that took me in at earlier stages. And I looked up to them because, like I said, I came from a single parent household where, I didn't really get to know my father. Of course, I knew I had a father and I knew he was present. But I had 1 year when I stayed with him when I was going into the 5th grade. And then after that, I ended up moving back to where I'm from, like I said, Charlotte, North Carolina. But in that, I didn't really know my dad. I didn't really have that presence around throughout my adolescence and my teenage years. And so I looked up to the people that was around my neighborhood. I looked up to, gangbangers. I looked up to, guys that was getting bread. I looked up to TV. I looked up to, I'm post, Tupac era, at this time. I was born in 88. My siblings, the memories that I have of Tupac, was the death row era of Tupac. And so when I was younger, I remember my sister calling me to the house when Tupac died, and having candles lit, and I came from a household big hip hop, Tupac fans, and R&B and soul. I remember my mom driving to my grandma's and listening to James Brown with my aunt, and gospel music was very prevalent in the household. Came from a Christian household. But in that, like I said, when it came to what I looked up to, it was what I saw. It was what I saw in my surroundings, people like that, or looking at the TV and seeing people like Pac. That's the persona of a thug life mentality. Before I really understood what that was, that's what I gravitated towards. And so in that, you're talking about somebody as they got older into his teenage years, looked for that surrounding and was accepted by that surrounding, became a product of his environment. I started dealing with, like I said, gang activity at an early age. I started dealing with drug abuse at an early age. Weed and, your typical, like, what they call gateways. And as you guys get to know me more, I don't call gateways like I did end up doing bigger like type of stuff like coke and lean and things that they would deem marijuana was like a gateway, but that's not what I perceive like the gateway that they're talking about. A gateway like spiritually, I feel like it's a gateway to things that can open you up to different portals and levels that can take you down a rabbit hole in that way. And then I can understand why people say gateway in the sense of like it could sometimes lead to bigger, heavier sets of drugs, like how it did with me. But I don't think marijuana was the reason that I discovered other drugs. It was just a void of an emptiness in me that wanted just to feed more of just numbness in that regard. Some people do. Maybe, like they try marijuana and they get that high and like, man, I need a bigger type of high. Yeah, and everybody is different in that regard. But for me, those are the things I started with, drinking heavily, come from a bloodline of like, alcoholism. And so drinking was prevalent for me. When I started, like 1 for me meant 6, 6 would turn to 15. My drink of choice, I was a cheap beer drinker. So it was PBR and the nastiest of the nasty, Aristocrat, stuff like that. Like, cause I had a friend named Napoleon who does stand up now. Shout out to him. He always used the expression, I don't drink for the taste, I drink for the numbness. And that was definitely the definition of me, because I would drink the cheapest just to get me down into a level of just not feeling anything. And that carried on into my 20s, man. That carried on to my 20s to where I was just going through the motions. I didn't really understand. A lot of confusion, a lot of hurt, dealing with like, why did my dad leave? Like I was watching my father leave. I remember watching him leave one time in a suitcase, going down the sidewalk, and fast forward, you have this guy that I feel like corrected his mistakes, and I would imagine from the outside looking in, me and my father never talked about this, but I would imagine just how he looked at how he failed that first marriage, was like, I'm gonna make sure in this second marriage that I do a better job, and so like for me, it gave me a lot of anger, and a lot of why, like, like he wasn't here for us, but then like he's in this household with this woman, he has this child that ends up being like my little sister, a part of her life the whole time, and like she's on a career path of like greatness. She was going to school, getting good grades, and she ends up going to college, like, which I ended up going to college for a little bit, in that regard. But for the wrong reasons, I ended up leaving, because it was a waste of my time. I don't think school is a waste of time if you know what you want to do, and but in that regard, I was a damaged soul in regards of like I was spending too much time partying and wasting money, and scholarships were running out, and I was like, man, like if I really want to do this, like I'll come back to this, I'll come back when I know what I really want to do, because right now I'm just wasting money and drinking. I can do that back in Charlotte. And so in regards to that, like I see, talking about, like I said, with my father, and the family that he ended up being a part of with my little sister, I was like, man, she's in college of Charleston, you know, set to be a lawyer and stuff like that. So I would have a lot of these bitterness inside of me, a lot of regret of just like, man, like how would things have turned out if like he would have stayed, and you know, what would have I been? You know, the what if, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? Of your mind playing, you know, the biggest battle, you know. Your biggest battle is your mind. Your biggest enemy is your enemy, like Lupe said. I vouch for that, because that would be the biggest battle that I would be facing throughout this time. It's just a deep depression of like not being worthy then. And so from that, you know, alcoholism was my void filler. I don't know if you remember, but in the earlier stages, like I said, of talking, when I started this, I said I came from a Christian household. Gospel music was played, and so Jesus was prevalent when it came to me knowing who he was. I knew there was a Jesus. I knew there was a God, but I didn't have a personal relationship yet at this time. I didn't really seek him for a personal relationship. I didn't really talk to him at these stages that I'm talking about. You know, the teenage years. You know, I remember getting saved when I was like 9. But like I said, I didn't have no personal relationship with God up until this point. So in this, you know, as I got older, you know, you start living in the world and, you know, meeting friends, and, you know, because like I said, I was wanting to be liked. And so, you know, a lot of the people, like I said, let's not forget the lifestyle that I put myself in because of not feeling like wanted. You know, a lot of the people that was around, you know, was just there because of like the stuff that I was doing for them, or be able to do for them, you know, and be able to give them. So a lot of associates, not a lot of friends. But in that, finding these people, you see people from different walks of life. You see people from different religions, different cultures, and it makes you start to question things when it comes to like, is God, this God that I've been believing in, this Jesus character, is he truly the only way? Is he the only way to heaven? You know, because I'm chilling with this guy who's a Muslim, and man, he's a really cool dude, but like, and he says he believes Jesus is a prophet, but you know, is Jesus really the only way? I'm chilling with Buddhists, and you know, I'm starting to question it, if this truly is like the only way. So in questioning that, you know, I find myself, you know, trying to settle down. You know, I find a woman, and we end up, you know, getting serious. I end up actually getting engaged to her, and sad enough, it didn't work out. Well, I ain't gonna say sad enough, because now, fast forward, you know, I found the one for me. I found a beautiful woman that I will marry. We'll get into that later on as well, though. But at this time, the ex-fiance that I had, I wasn't ready for that. You know, I wasn't ready. Like I said, I was still in the world. You know, I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I would be coming home drunk, drinking like a skunk, you know, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and she wondering where I'm at all night. You know, just not committed to what would be at hand, of like trying to be prepared to be a husband. And you know, the biggest things for a woman, you know, aside, yes, financial security is a big portion of it, but security as a whole is the bigger piece altogether. Under that, you know, security is the umbrella for the woman. And then you have the different branches off, you know, from security: financially, spiritually, mentally. You know, can I rely on this man? Can I confide in this man? You know, is he there? Is he present? Does he have goals? You know, is he moving towards those goals? You know, is he paying bills? You know, stuff like that. It's all under the umbrella of security. And I wasn't giving her that. You know, I was giving her probably one portion of that when it comes to like dealing with the finances and stuff like that. But as far as when it comes to being there emotionally for her, you know, listening to her, you know, in that regards, like, no, I wasn't there for her at all for that. And she found it. She found it somewhere else. She found it, you know, like and I take responsibility for that, but that doesn't mean you go out and cheat like how she did. Our communication was lacking on both ends, you know, because I didn't know the way that she was feeling up until it was too late at that point. And so in dealing with that, like I said, she didn't find that communication with me, so she ended up cheating on me and leaving me. And I was one of those guys, and at that time, you know, once you know, you start dealing with like cheating on me and stuff like that, I'm pretty much done. I'm out of the picture. And she was done, you know, like she was, you know, because at that time, like I said, we were looking at getting married. I asked her before I left, I was like, you want to get counseling or anything like that? And we were like, nope, good. You know, the damage was already done. She was already finding somebody that was going to be worth her time, and that relationship was kaput. And so I bring this relationship up because that was at a time where it was very pivotal for me, where I was sparking interest back in spirituality. Like I said, like I was hanging around different people of different cultures. I was battling with my own thoughts of like, who is this Jesus character? And here lies this woman that I felt like was going to be the one. You know, I was praying, starting to pray, but at the same time, I was looking at God like a genie, you know, in that regard of just like, I want this for my life, and, you know, I expect this from you. If I pray this, you know, will this, you know, I want this to happen. Not really having communication with him, not really having a personal relationship with him, not acknowledging him in that regard, other than like, this is what I want. Please give this to me in Jesus' name. And in that, you know, very selfish and very egotistical when it came to my thoughts of how I was dealing with God at that time. And so along this time, at the same time, I had an uncle that I was really close with, that I was going to actually allow to marry me and this woman, Uncle Pete, a close relative of the family. And I related to him a lot because, like, he was one of those guys that was always funny. You know, he had a very great personality, and God was working through him. You know, he had transitioned his life. This is somebody that knew about stuff that I was dealing with when it came to, like, being someone that came from a household and then going into a life of, like, dealing with, like, addiction and, you know, street life, and then completely turning his life around 180 to God. And so, like, I always had a close spot in my heart and respect for him because of that, being able to do that. And like I said, just being a natural, funny guy. But he ended up getting, you know, really sick. He ended up getting sick. And so in that sickness, you know, I prayed, the family prayed, excuse me, like many trials and errors that come into people's lives. You seek God for those times that you're in need. And I did, you know, I prayed heavily and was like, Lord, please, like, this be the way, like, you know, don't let it be the way right now in time. And I just want him to stay here, and I thank you for healing. And, you know, we just praying, and he gets better through that, you know, that process. And I don't know if it was probably less than a month, man. At the same time, this is where me and the ex was like, it's about to be over. My mom hits me up and it was like, he passed. Uncle Pete passed. You know, he took a turn for the worse and he ended up passing. And I was so shocked by that because I was like, I don't know. It was just like, what? Like, I was just like, to see somebody transition so good, like, fully recover, it felt like, and then like to just take that turn like that, like how he took, it really threw me for a loop, because like I said, this is my perception of not even thinking of the bigger picture or any kind of relationship I had with God other than just like, this is my request, this is what I'm praying for, get it done, like I said, like a genie. And so if you have that mind frame like that, and then situations like that hit the fan, it's gonna take you for a loop, because you're not in a true relationship with Christ, and that's not what I was in. And so I got really angry. I got really bitter, very sour, and at that moment, I turned completely. I turned away from God. I didn't think he was listening. I didn't think he was hearing me anymore. I got even deeper into the addiction, deeper into the lifestyle. Ended up finding another woman. This woman, I call it like my King Solomon moment, because this woman was dealing with the occult. And that's where I discovered the occult, dealing with this woman, dealing with a lot more spiritual stuff that I ever thought was out here. Even dealing with me being a Christian, it was very religious, surface based. It wasn't, based on spirituality. And, like, you can be someone that's a Christian, but not be spiritual at all, and be very religious. And I was at that point. And so meeting this person that was dealing with like witchcraft and like occult and family in it, and you know what I'm saying, it threw me for a loop, because I was like, man, like, what is this like? This woman's like, because we knew of the enemy. Like, I knew there was an enemy. I knew there was a Satan, but I didn't know the extent of like him having a kingdom. You know what I'm saying? Like, in regards of like an army. Like really like moving and planning like how the enemy does. The enemy is very strategic. He copies and mimics everything that the Father does. And in that regard, like, I have no regret from that experience, because it showed me how serious spiritual warfare can be. At this time, like, she started to break down, dealing with like, spirits, summoning, and dealing with like witchcraft. And like, I start seeing people on the flip side of things, that what I was born in, dealing with like a Christian household, I started seeing people from an occult household. That it's almost like if someone would go to church on a Sunday, these occult people were going to their little services on a Monday, and giving praise to the enemy. Like, and in that regard, like, them giving praise to the enemy, them giving so much emphasis when it came to like disrespecting Christianity as well. Like, they would be talking about just like the curses of Christianity, and like dealing with like how Jesus is a joke, and like just very much of Jesus bashing. No other bashing when it came to like Muhammad. No other really main focus on like like Buddhism, you know what I'm saying? But very much so of like, we're not on this Jesus thing at all when it came to like the disrespect. And so it made me think. It just made me think, and like everything came full circle to where it was like, okay, if these people are putting so much emphasis on disrespecting Jesus, if Jesus is so much so of like, an enemy to them, then he got to be the only way. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they're putting so much hate on Christ, as opposed, and they're not even talking about these other religions, they're not even talking about Islam like that, like this, I need to investigate Christ more. And at this time, like I said, like, I was like, that's why I call it King Solomon moment, because I fell from God. Like I said, I was dealing with this woman. I had pretty much pledged allegiance to the enemy, because like at this time, as I was telling you earlier, I had given up on God because of the death of my uncle. And so I had told the enemy, if you're present, then let's see what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? And in that, it's the old expression, you keep knocking at the devil's door, he may answer you. And the enemy answered me. The enemy answered me with witches. The enemy answered me with spiritual warfare in the mind. And I think the Father allowed that because I didn't believe in those things. And it's nothing but the grace of God to where I'm able here to tell you this story now of like how I overcame this stuff. But at the time, you know, like I'd be getting like visitations and like, you know, just demonic, very dark torture of just like it wasn't like on some like, and I know it was because of like the Father allowing me to see it in this, because he still had his hand over me. You know, you see how I try to do that? Like he still had his hand over me in this regard of me being even in darkness. He still was like, I see the end of this thing. And so in that, like, I was having visitations from like demonic beings that was like, I was getting touched, and for real, like on some like straight up like rape type stuff. Like they were like doing butt, like everything, like rape, literally. Like it was almost on some like hell on earth type stuff. You know, like it was coming like in and out of my body. Like I don't know if you guys ever seen like Mortal Kombat, like when Shang Tsung was like the older one, when like the souls were just coming in and out of his body. You know, you could see him. It's two parts of it. Like towards the end when Liu Kang about to beat him, but in the beginning I'm talking about when he on the boat. He's like, it has begun, and like the spirits are just like flowing through him. Like it was like that. The attack that was like just flowing through me. These spirits, to the point where I had to get out. I had to jump out of my bed, and like I remember I was laying on the floor and just like in so much pain and just feeling like I was like just attacked. And so, man, like I went through that experience, and once like that experience was over, like I knew like I needed help. I knew that I had tapped into a ground that I did not want to embark on. You know, I did not want to dig too deep into this soil, but I did, and I needed help trying to get out of it. But I was possessed at this point. At this point, I was possessed. You know, like it was just heavy possession to the point where I was like, I remember I was with my brother, and I was driving. We were driving in the rain, and I was so gone. Like I wasn't even like using the windshield wipers. He was just like, "Man, what's wrong with you?" Like it was like I was just zoned out. Like just like the demonic attacks like in my head, the demonic attacks that was like the enemy rested upon me. Like it was just really bad to where this point like I was getting mentally tortured. We're just like, yeah, you're going to hell, you left, you know, like just demonic torture, demonic mental torture, you know, just physical torture, you know. And I thought I was a goner, man. I thought I was a goner, and I was like, man, like I didn't see Christ, even in knowing that Christ was the way, like how the enemy does. I felt like I was so deep in like what I gave myself to, of trying to see if it was real, that it was no look back. You know, it was no look back for that. Like how the enemy does, he tries to trick you, make you think it's not a way out. And so at that time, I was like, man, I'm just gonna drink myself to death, man. Like I'm just gonna take these drugs, and you know, my mentality was just not to live here anymore. You know, like I was like, I don't know if the Lord will ever accept me, because like I'll be praying, just like you hear the demonic laughter, like like just, it was just like I said, it was demonic torture, man. Like mental torture, like these spiritual beings like just torturing me mentally. Because I'd open myself to this, you know. That's what I mean by a gateway. I'd open myself to the spiritual realm in that regard, asking Satan, you know, prove yourself to me. And in that, I feel like God allowed him to the point to where it almost lost my freaking mind. I did technically, like, people, like, at this time, my mother, she ended up getting a job where she was working independently for the government. So she wasn't even here. She was overseas. And just imagine, like, your youngest child going through these things. You can't even touch them. You're having to find out things from other people based on like phone calls and not actually seeing it for yourself. And so in that regard, it was just like a horrible time for me, to where it was just like, man, I'm just going to drink myself to death. And I ended up doing some drugs. I'm sorry. I ended up, doing some drugs, and at this moment in my life, I wasn't the day that I did end up overdosing. Um, I didn't go into that day like I'm going to overdose, even though like I'm telling you guys, like my mind frame was on like death. I was too much of a coward to do it in a quick route. For me, this is just keeping it a buck with you guys, which I always will. This is not just a testimony of one and done. This is going to be an opening to where this channel, is going to be very transparent of my life, helping people get through their life and us accomplishing, these goals, man, of life, period. But in that, I didn't go into the day like I'm going to overdose that day. Like, so the mind frame, like I said, was just like, I want to die, but I'm too much of a coward to like, blow my brains out. I didn't want a messy ending like that. I didn't want to take enough at once to just die that time. I was just, and I think that's how most people are. They like, well, I'll go the slow way. I'll just continue to drink and drink and drink, and maybe hopefully like I'll get something and pass away. But I ended up doing it too much, man, to the point where I ended up taking some, and this was like you see a lot of it now, like people like sprinkling fentanyl in people's anything, went from cocaine to, I've had a couple friends sadly pass away that were, on cocaine, but like the cut in their cocaine was fentanyl, and end up taking their lives. And in this regard, it didn't take my life, but it made me OD to a point to where like my life was at that crossroads. It was very much so at that crossroads. I remember calling the guy that I got my drugs from that day. This is after I called the ambulance because I felt it. I just felt it. My body got real cold. It was just like, I knew it was about to be a wrap. Like I just felt my like breath, everything. Felt it. And I knew then this was like me, like I was transitioning at this time. Because I remember calling the guy, and then by this time the ambulance comes, and I'm trying to call him. He ends up picking up. I'm like, man, like I'm so slurred. I'm like, man, what did you give me, man? Like, I'm dying. And he was like, oh man, he was like, you ain't here. This is how I knew I was like about to like on some Snoop Dogg type stuff. I don't know if you guys seen Murder Was the Case. I don't know if you remember the video where he's talking after he gets shot, and he's like, as I look up in the sky, my mind's blah, 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 blah. But, he's transitioning and seeing like demons and stuff like that. And so like, in that he's like, oh, bro, you're not here no more. He was like, you're in hell. And like the voice got mad deep, like, yo, you're in hell. And I was like, my eyes were just like, oh, shoot. Like, oh, no. And I just spazzed out. I spazzed out, and I looked to the right, looked to the left. Like, I'm trying to like I don't even got the energy to do it. Like, but like, I'm trying to like get out of this motion of this horrible place. And I tell you, man, for the next, like, I don't know how long, but I was going back and forth from like, it was on some like, it was like I was going back and forth to different planes, like spiritually, in this realm and the spiritual realm, because like I would be coming in like the hospital, and they had me in an area where it was like, because I'd, after that experience when he was like, you in hell, I tried to fight people off. And so by the time they got me to the hospital, because they were so scared of like that situation that happened, they deemed me straight crazy. They had me in a whole different area in the emergency room. They had me on some like 5150 type junk, because they were like, this boy, he needs some help, but he needs some help too. Like, we ain't trying to mess with this cat right now. Like put him over there somewhere. Like, get the doctor, tell him they over there. And so in that, like, I was coming in and coming out like the nurses and the doctors trying to like help me. Then I would fade back out, and it was just like hear demons growling and just like touching my skin, and just I was just crying, like my soul was just crying. And I remember hearing like a spirit crying, and I feel like at this point it was like an angel just saying, I'm sorry. Like I feel like I was going through this, like they were allowing me to go through this testing. The bigger picture, I feel like God always knew he was going to pull me out of this, but I had to go through this situation to know that these experiences are real, to know that hell is real, to know that, the lifestyle that I was living wasn't the best. And even this is the kicker for y'all, is like in this experience, yes, the lifestyle that I was living, is not the best, like drinking and living La Vida Loca like I was trying to live. But in this experience that I had, and coming back and forth, I saw my father, I saw the anger. Like I was allowed to feel that, and the reasons of why I was in hell, because I was transitioning out of hate. I was transitioning from coming here to going to hell. Like I wasn't like seeing like Jesus. He was showing me where my resting place would be if I didn't recover from this. And so in that, it wasn't because of the drugs in the situation that I was in hell. He said because of my heart, my unforgiveness in my heart. And the Spirit of the Lord spoke to me in there. It was like, because of your heart, you got so much unforgiveness in your heart. And I thought about, he made me remember, like, I remember the woman that at that time I was in love with, like I was saying, the ex fiance that I had mad love for, and how it ended. My dad, those were the two biggest ones that came to my mind. And in those, I was like, oh man, I was like, Lord, I'm sorry. It's just like, it came back to like, and as you guys get to know me more, you're gonna know, like, I'm all about the experience. Not to discredit anything when it comes to this word, because I'm all about that word too. But I don't know the word back from back, you know what I'm saying, from front to back. And so with that, I'm gonna give you a lot of paraphrasing. But if you guys, iron sharpen iron, you guys know the word. It's something that I'm trying to build upon, just being who I am now, like a believer in Christ. But these are experiences that I'm telling you guys. And so, but I'm saying that to say it's a scripture where it's pretty much like, how can I forgive you if you can't, with unforgiveness in your heart, or something like that. Again, like I said, I'm paraphrasing. But it came back to that. I seen that, and I was just like, oh man, like, you're right. Like, it came back down to the basics. Like, how can the Father forgive me if I still got that unforgiveness in my heart? And man, it's just like, and I've seen this, like, because after these experiences, you start to research others and be like, man, like, who else has been through stuff like this, and who else is like, transitioned out of this and things like that. And I remember listening to one guy, I can't even remember, but it reminded me of myself, because he said in his experience when he was in hell, like it was no second guessing. Like, it wasn't no like, why am I here? Like, he explained, the Spirit of the Lord, like, confirmed, and in my spirit, it wasn't even a fight of like, and I think of like the weeping of gnashing of teeth, as it says, like, it was a weeping of disappointment, because I knew why I was in there. I knew why he had every right to keep me there, because of me being like that. And that's where the weeping came from, that I couldn't get out of this, and I had failed. That's how I felt. In that, man, for y'all, like, we're yielded servants. That's my point of like how I look at it now. That's why the Lord brought me back, for this testimony, to be more of a servant, to be more selfless, to be in yielded servitude, to tell people that these experiences are real. But in that, I get a second chance. I come out of it. I start to get stable. I get stable, and they got the doctor. Like, man, it's like, it was like being in the Matrix. It's like everything I knew, even when I came back into the physical, it felt like on some spiritual. Even the doctor I had was just on some, like, it was almost like the peace of Christ was on her. And she was like, "You ready? Like, are you good?" And like, you had a lot going on there. Like, we able to got you stable, and you're back. She was like, "Your sister's here." At that time, like they were fighting me. They were fighting for me. Not my sister, but like they were fighting to get me back stable and stuff. And I remember later on, I find out like my family, like my brother and my sister that I told you guys that I was staying with majority of my life. They were in the emergency room. They were waiting, because of what was going on. They couldn't have them back there while they were trying to keep me stable. And so once they got me stable, they allowed one at a time. They didn't even actually allow my brother, but they got my sister. But I think it was reasoning behind that, because my sister, came with a book. She came with a book, and the name of the book was called, I remember she came and just like, she looked like how my sister Willette be looking, like, shout out to Willette. She came in there and was like, "Yo, I'm gonna give you this book." She just came like in a mindset, like she knew I was gonna be all right. It's almost like she knew everything, like the Holy Spirit probably had told her. And she came with a book called Pigs in a Parlor. And it was a book based on, dealing with, like, it really gives you insight of like the spiritual warfare and the spiritual entities that you are facing on this walk. Really good book. If I recommend for anyone if they're dealing with like, read it in prayer, read it in like, strength, because it is a book, I've gotten to where, like my aunt and a couple other people have felt like, because of the knowledge in that book, that they've gotten demonically attacked. And so, whoever reads that book, Pigs in a Parlor, I pray strength. I pray, the spirit of fear not be on you in reading that, in the name of Jesus Christ. But she came with that book to give me, and then she prayed over me. And from that point, she prayed over me. She was just like, "Man, like, you going through this situation like this, it's like, this is the perfect time." It's just like, it comes back down to Christ. And I remember right there at that bed, I was like, "Man, yeah, you right." I was like, I was exhausted. I remember me and my brother was in the car one time. This is way before this, when we were both living in the world. And he was like, "Man," that's when I knew he was getting closer to like giving his life, fully to Christ. And he was like, "Man," he was like, "Bruh, it's been like a 12-round bout that I've been fighting. And I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm ready to just give it up and give it to God." And that's how I was at that point. Like, I've been fighting this flesh and, fighting, the Holy Spirit telling me and pulling me, and, and it's just like my spirit was tired. It was ready. It was like, this is the time. It's time, man. It's time. If not like any other time, it's time right now to go ahead and do that. And so I left that hospital with a different mind frame, man. Acknowledging the fullness of God, the mercy of God, who he was, understanding what the cross really was about, who Christ was. Like, in this experience, like, the voice of Christ came to me, like it's almost like some like telepathy type stuff, where it was like, where you just, some people talk about it in their dreams, where it's like, you just know, like when in certain things, like the spirit will announce it, where it's like, the spirit of God, like that is Jesus, like this is the Holy Spirit, like this is the Father, this is the enemy. You feel it, the coldness, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I knew. And I was just like, man, like all that stuff I was researching, all that stuff that I was like, dealing with, like, is he the way? And like, I had been to hell and back. The only thing that brought me back with a sane mind, you know, was Jesus Christ. The only thing that saved me, that talked to me, that showed me the beauty and the love that I was looking for, the acceptance that I was looking for, was Jesus Christ. And in that, like, I was like, for Christ I live, for Christ I die, man. Like, this is it right here. This is it. This is what it's about. You know, this is the void this is the void filler right here. This is what I was looking for. And so, you know, that was for me the test that I went through of life. And, you know, everybody has these tests, you know, that life throws at you. Being raised a certain kind of way, being, you know, in certain experiences, being bullied, and, you know, like, I went through it all, man, from being called too skinny, you know, from being, you know, touched as a child by people that I trusted, from, you know, going through the ups and downs of heartbreak and, you know, depression. All these tests, man, they're tests for the testimony, I'm telling you. Because there's somebody out here that's going through a similar situation right now that you haven't even met yet. You haven't even met yet. I don't know who this video is going to reach. You know, where we're going on. I don't know how long it's been. But, you know, if it reaches one person, you know, that's enough. Because, you know, in that, you know, I found not only the everlasting joy of what Christ can give you, I found my true calling of what I feel like I'm meant to do, which is help people, you know, help people and coach people in the right directions of how to get out of situations, how to goal set and move in the right direction, you know, how to build back. Because, you know, like, when I look at coaching, I look at a team, like I said in the beginning, how to build back your courage of the goal that you may have left back, how to restore your faith back in the planning of it, you know, and God is the ultimate planner. And so in that, man, you know, my name is Jonathan Titus Hart. You know, I'm a life coach. I'm a certified life coach, you know, from many walks of life. You know, I've experienced so many different things, and in those things, from the worst to the greatest, I have no regrets because it made me the person who I am. And I feel like it prepared me for moments like this, to where I could be a vessel for the person that's looking to, you know, get out of those holes, that's ready to get out of those holes when it comes to, like, their lives, who's ready to get out of those holes when it comes to disappointment and depression, and set the proper planning in order for their life, whether it's just as simple as getting off addiction or finding a job, you know. And I say simple, but it's not that simple, you know. It's a process, especially with addiction, because I went through it. Like, I'm going on 3 years now. The heavy drugs, it's been about 10 years, but I'm going off 3 years of sobriety when it comes to alcoholism. So even after that experience, I still drunk from here and there. But even as time went on, I felt like, for me, I was done with that too. You know, it got to a point to where I didn't even want to do that anymore. I wanted to just make sure, because I spent so many of my years feeling like I needed a crutch for something in life. I just wanted to make sure the only crutch that I needed was Christ. You know, I didn't want to use alcohol for, like, my social anxiety and, you know, my feeling awkwardness around, like, people when I'm at spots and enjoying live music, but, you know, don't, like Ricky Bobby, I don't know what to do with my hands because the band stopped playing and I'm seeing people look at me and I'm getting nervous. And so it's like, face that stuff, man. Face it head on, you know. Even in stuff like that, that's goal setting, you know. That's what I'm here for as well as a life coach. You know, from the simplest of just finding a job, to the emotional when it comes to, like, setting goals to go out and socialize and be that person that you've always wanted to be. You know, I'm here for you on that regard as well. So, You know, this is my channel. This is my YouTube channel. I have a TikTok as well, Jonathan Titus Hart, and I'll be having an Instagram as well. It'll be the same, Jonathan Titus Hart, and it'll just be a channel of just me voicing stuff, man. You know, just voicing. You know, this isn't the last. This is the first of many. You know, from my day-to-days to, you know, different things that I've gone through that I feel like you guys may want to get insight on. You know, this is what this is here for, this channel, you know, this vlogging of my day-to-day. And the TikTok will be the same, you know, and the Instagram will be the same as well. Because, I mean, it's like the Liberty Mutual commercial for me, man. Like, if you guys remember that commercial where they see one person do a good deed and somebody from afar is watching them, but they see that and they spread that to the next person that they see. And I feel like that's what God really intended us to do, man. If we spread that truly, sincerely, you know, because a lot of people be like, how everybody gonna get it? You know, it goes back to what's the new commandment that Christ gave people? You know, love thy neighbor. If you sincerely do that, really do that, man. One person, you know, the world is so big. You know, start with your own community. Start in your own backyard. Start with your family, your own household. If you truly do that one person at a time, you know, you'll reach the right people that need to be reached. And so, you know, that's my goal. You know, is to one person at a time, one video at a time, spread the love of Christ, and, you know, continue to be obedient and yielded, and see where it goes, man. Just see where it goes, one day at a time. That's all we can do, right? One day at a time. And so, yeah, that's it. That's a wrap for this one, and holla at your boy.